Day 21. So after having a few good days in a row, it was always inevitable that at some point I was going to have a bad day again, and yesterday evening that mist started to kind of descend again, and that kind of joy and happiness that I was actually able to feel for a few days started to disappear, and that made things just like trying to do anything quite difficult again. And I've been trying to think throughout the day how best to describe how I actually feel in those situations, because me saying the darkness descends is a very vague and poetic term that doesn't really explain anything. So when I talk about darkness descending, I'm generally talking about one of three main things that happen. And that's either the darkness that is all encompassing and ruminating and trapped in that situation, to a kind of detachment that puts you so disassociated with the world that you can't really concentrate on anything. And then just the general low mood that I have when I talk about having a normal day, but actually it's a -3 or a -5 instead of a normal day, which should really be a 0. That having been said, today where I have been on a bit of a down, I've not felt the intense pain that I would usually feel on a down, and so hopefully the concept of that scale having shifted upwards on the positive side has also pulled up the negative side, so that actually when I do drop, and I feel like I have dropped, it's not as far as I used to drop. So I've been experiencing many of the same sort of physical feelings, but without the same intense emotional pain, which is nice. So for me, the really dark times tend to come from isolated incidents or feelings where it's just one thing that comes arrowing in like a bullet. It hits me emotionally really hard and then starts to spread and overtake everything else. So it's this kind of motion of one thing that just drops in and starts to permeate through everything slowly to begin with. And it starts to get through all of the things that I'm trying to cling on to. And this is kind of representative of the intense pain hits, and then over the next few hours it starts to disseminate, and it starts to get more difficult, and it starts to become all-encompassing. And of course trying to see clearly when I'm in that situation is very difficult, because what I'm actually looking into is just this kind of thick darkness that I can't really feel like I can escape from. And I end up going round in that same idea that's gone in the first place over and over again, and that is just starting to encircle everything to the point where the idea itself is inescapable. Because I've lost sight of things by this point, I then start to do things that make this whole situation unstable, and the reaction from everything moving around me ends up in this much darker, thicker place, and all of the positives that I was trying to cling on to have disappeared because I kind of destroyed them. And after you spend some time in that world, you can't see any way out for a long period of time, and that's when suicide starts to feel like the best option, because it's the only way to get out of that situation. And then there's the kind of detachment drop that happens for me, which comes really quickly out of nowhere. And I become so disassociated with the world around me that I kind of forget what I'm doing and I don't really know where I am. It's a bit like if you were a baby and you look at stuff for the first time and you don't really connect it to anything, you can just see this world around you, and I start to get into this kind of glazed over mode, and as you can see very quickly it all kind of fills up and overtakes everything, but as the minutes go on that will start to descend, and it ends up in just a general feeling of detachment, of not really feeling like I'm a part of the world and not wanting to have anything in my life. And this situation is probably the easiest to identify in me when I go through it, because you can just see a glaze over my eyes, and suddenly you feel detached from me because I feel detached from you. And this isn't necessarily a really negative, dark place like the really intense pain. This is just a feeling of being lost and isolated and detached from everything. And then there's the kind of normal day that's actually a negative day, where I've got stuff going on, where on the surface you probably say, yeah, I'm absolutely fine, but underneath all that I've got this weight that is kind of dragging me down and making things difficult to do, and it generally starts with a bit of a ruckus going on. Something's knocked me into this state. That might be me remembering something, it might be something somebody says, it might be just an emotional response that I don't even understand, but that tends to settle pretty quickly, and then by the time it has settled I just carry that throughout the day and it lowers me, but on the whole I look as though I'm having a normal day. So I hope that's been in some way helpful. Well, it's really difficult to try and explain these three different mindsets that I end up in, and this is the closest I could kind of get. And the thing that makes them really difficult to talk about when they happen, because there's quite a chaotic start to all of them, I'm already in a place where I don't want to talk about it because I just want to be isolated, I want to be by myself, and therefore I don't want anybody's help. Although it's been a difficult day, it's actually been a positive overall because it feels like it should have been a lot worse and actually it wasn't. And we'll see what tomorrow has in store, so share, subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow.